Dead Harvest is an event that used to happen every October. Its main feature is playable zombies that hunt down the two factions. It began as a small event held on Tempest Island, which used to be a skirmish map. This mode used to take place on a different server than the main war. This was great for a quick game because it only lasted a couple of hours. All this to say that the 2018 Dead Harvest didn't affect the war at all. The game mode was simple and revolved around the day-night cycle. During the day, zombies were slower than players and easy to kill. During the night,
fetch me their souls!
Human players had to hide in their defenses and shoot at anything that moved. Their objective was to defend the church from zombie attack. Once the church was destroyed, zombies won the game and the match reset to 0. You might be wondering what the win condition was for humans. Well, there wasn't any. This was good old Call of Duty Zombies experience, and you played to get as far as possible. The supply started off abundant in your spawn zone, but there weren't any scrap nodes at all on the map, so eventually we ran out of guns and BMATs. There was one saving grace though. You could go out and salvage equipment from the surrounding areas. Yes, salvaging actually being an intended mechanic in Foxhole, because items used to be dropped on the ground directly instead of needing a container like in modern Foxhole. You could visually search for whatever you wanted. I cannot overstate the level of attention devs had to put into placing all these items individually, one at a time, in locations that make sense. There was clearly some thought put into the rarity of certain items. The storm rifle was difficult to find, and I remember only 2 ever spawning when the match started. That's why I always went for it as soon as I could. Nobody else had it, and a ton of storm rifle ammo was in the spawn area for armored cars. I basically had an endless amount of ammo just for me. During the day, people would form convoys and go around the map collecting as much stuff as they could before returning at dawn. At the start, people liked using ACs, but they quickly proved to be very weak to zombie hits, and during the night, a zombie could just run circles around it. The players had to be careful, even during the day, because if you died to a zombie, you'd then respawn as one for the rest of the match. This could be prevented by equipping totems that you found in your spawn stockpile. Whenever you died with those on you, you'd respawn as a human like usual. Builders had a hard time back in those days. This is more than an entire year before trenches existed, so a lot of you must be confused about the cluttered mess you see in these images. To put it simply, there were a lot less restrictions to building, but the tools were very limited. There was only one type of sandbag wall, and it was just straight line. There was no way to snap pieces together, but that was also an advantage in a way, because you could build sandbags very close to each other. Same was done with tank traps and tier 1 walls. Those walls were chain link fences that allowed you to shoot through them. The spawn area would quickly become a maze of obstacles that was incredibly difficult to navigate. To me, this shows how creative people can be with limited resources. All this stuff was functional, though it was admittedly clunky. Eventually, of course, BMATs would run out, and zombies would become too numerous for builders to compensate during the day. Defenders would gradually wear down until nothing was left but the church's bare walls. At that point, players would huddle inside and shoot anything that came in the doorway. The map was fairly small, and the city only had a handful of entry points, so players would start by defending them early on in the match. I still think RP is an important part of Foxhole, even though most of us don't think about it much. Immersing yourself in the world lets you appreciate it a lot more. In Dead Harvest, I patrolled the entryways into the town with my storm rifle, providing automatic firepower anywhere it was needed. Checking up on defenders and maintaining defenses was an amazing experience for me personally. There's also the fact that both Warrens and Colonials worked together during the event. Devs even removed friendly fire completely just to make sure the spawn zone wouldn't immediately become the bloodbath. The spawn zones were at opposing corners of the town square, so half the city would be patrolled by Warrens and the other half by Colonials. There was this unspoken agreement that each side would defend their own, and there was surprisingly little commingling between the teams. I can't recall any other time both teams were mechanically forced to work cooperatively, and I get giddy every time I think about it. On the zombie side, the gameplay is fairly simple. You are either randomly selected at the start of the match to become a zombie, or you die without a totem and respawn as one. You'd have to kill humans to level up and get more health. You started barely able to survive a rifle shot, but after a dozen kills you'd be a walking killing machine that could tank heavy machine gun rounds to the face without breaking a sweat. A really fun thing to do as a zombie was to assemble a bunch of people run together towards a target. Imagine a bayonet rush, except you're also immune to lead poisoning. The 2018 Jet Harvest gave a sense of dread that I've been searching for ever since it ended. I didn't want to sound too nostalgic, but I think for such a small event it was amazingly well done. Fun fact, the sniper rifle was added during the event and was completely useless against fast running zombies.
We got the bear bag.
Yeah, you've caught me.
Guys,
can I give you a
hug? We're like SEAL Team 16.
What, I don't get a bathroom in this cell?
Ah! I don't want to be here anymore. That's NG. Get out, get out, get out. Who the fuck?
In 2019, one of the most memorable fan favorites of Dead Harvest was added, the mech. The mech was the most powerful vehicle added into the game at the time. It had 2 independently controlled machine guns, a cannon, and even a seat for a spotter. The height alone gave a massive view range of binos. Its only drawbacks were its fuel usage and its rarity. See, back in those days, there were these vehicles called relics. A lot of players might still remember them in their later forms as event vehicles, but back then they were part of normal gameplay. You could easily access a relic truck or get a relic bus just by cruising along the road. Armored fighting tractors and storm tanks were rarer and required you to search in backline areas. I never got this idea confirmed officially, but I personally believe that there was a hard-coded cap to the amount of fighting vehicles that could be in the game. I never managed to see more than 3 mechs at a time. Its rarity meant only a handful of players ever managed to use it in combat. I myself only drove once to move it from one depot to another. I think a lot of people mostly remember this event for its mechs. The zombie gameplay was less than stellar.
Hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass on.
Because skirmish maps had been removed previously, the developers had to implement the event in the main war if they wanted to do anything at all that October. This caused a bit of a problem in that a lot of people weren't satisfied with the gameplay and had no other place to go. The zombies in 2019 functioned similarly to the ones in 2018. Killing humans made you stronger, and you had to carry a totem on you to prevent yourself from turning on death. You could also upgrade your zombies to a Naruto runner and to a tanky boy. Zombies spawned from forts they destroyed. These structures were on the edge of the maps and normally served as a spawn point for pushing across a border. Zombies were also given the goal to claim as many forts as they can to induce permanent nighttime. In a way, it seems like Clapfoot was trying to implement zombies as a third faction of its own goals. Foxhole being what it is, people immediately started using zombies as tools of war. The strategy was to become a zombie, then run across the maps to claim a fort in deep enemy territory. From that point on, anybody you killed would become a partisan on your side, with infinite spawn points. It was especially effective with new players because they thought it was harmless fun. Traveling in a truck was almost impossible even with 6 people covering you, because the only weapon available was a rifle. Thankfully, important Logi centers had magic barriers that zombies couldn't pass, but that still didn't let Logi ship equipment around. The gameplay during the first half of the war was desperate. Everybody was cut off from supplies and reinforcements. It was endlessly nighttime, so zombies were at full speed. Worst of all, zombies had voice chat so you could hear your undead allies screaming your name. Pockets of resistance were trying to survive the endless horde. Humans pulled together to form firing lines. The shotgun was king at this time. Prior to trenches, it was the best weapon in the game. It was the only one able to one-shot zombies and required less logistics than automatic guns. Usually people would try to build simple defenses to stop the oncoming horde. These barricades range from sandbag walls to massive checkpoints with in-placed FMGs. Later on in the war, it was much easier to defend thanks to AI defenses. AT turrets had the funny behavior of shooting zombies with their own explosives, so it was possible as a zombie to destroy bases by making defenses shoot each other. Upgrading zombies without cheating was fairly difficult due to how weak the first variant was. It was impossible to regain health without killing an enemy. You had to play very cautiously to get higher levels. Once you got to the Avertech, you could run so fast that nobody could shoot you properly. Vehicles would still instantly kill you though. Stories persist to this day about wardens and colonials putting their differences aside and fighting together during this part of the war. This didn't last long. Clans quickly started using mass hordes of zombies to fight for them. Eventually the servers were nearly empty and wardens could power through regions without pushback. Dead Harvest 2019 had some good moments, but overall, I see it as a failure. Mechs weren't finished and could literally fall over. Zombie levels didn't make much sense, and the endless night mechanic ruined early gameplay. Many of these features were flat out unfinished. Thankfully, the next event managed to fix these problems.
Get the tank in front of me and stop me, I'm just sliding. I need the guys in front of me. This thing is sliding.
You think you're sick, oh man?
The final year of Dead Harvest felt like developers saw 2019 and thought it didn't go hard enough. Zombies weren't their own faction anymore, they became bioweapons. Ordinary players would have to use crystals to willingly become undead. These were treated as any other piece of equipment, so you had to be created and shipped to front lines. Now, instead of becoming a zombie on death, you would become a human again. This removed the fangs from the event in a way, because it couldn't affect the main war much. The same 3 levels of zombies made their reappearance, but now they had extra abilities that weren't finished in 2019. The normal type of zombies remained the same as always, but they were fairly weak because you couldn't upgrade your health. As infantry, using it meant you were exchanging your guns for the ability to run and cause melee damage to vehicles. The second type of zombie, called the Avertic, gained the range attack alongside its fast speed. This was arguably the most powerful form, since it let you do infinite small damage amounts from behind cover. Partisans would use them to slowly chip away at defenses and attack logi trucks. The final version, called the Baylor Spawn, let you do a ground pound attack that heavily damaged everything in the immediate area. With its large health pool, this form was good as a shock unit, but it was fairly expensive. Crystals were created in portals that were added to logi centers. Not many people consider the potential consequences of using gateways to hell as tools of war, but hey, it's flexible. Mechs were improved from the previous year. Relic vehicles were long gone at that point, so a new mechanic was added to create death machines. You were able to create mechs and vehicle factories with arm mats after unlocking them in a tech tree. There was also a new variant added to wardens to fit with the split tech trees that was still a new feature at that point. This new mech looked uncannily similar to a storm tank with legs. Its primary weapon was a quad mount rocket launcher. An FMG was also mounted on the belly. Its firing arc was limited, but it was capable of mowing down infantry. The Colonial mech was unchanged from the previous year, other than some minor nerfs to compensate for its non-relic status. It got a fresh new paint job too. Sadly, the 2020 Dead Harvest suffered from issues that were already present before its arrival. The splitting of the tech trees between factions created a significant divide in the player base, and the game became a lot more tryhard than it used to be. Colonials up to that point had less loyalist clans on their side, so a large amount of its player base relied on randoms to do most of the work. The issue with this is that bad gameplay tends to push away randoms while clans remain. All this led to Colonials losing the war so fast that mechs barely got unlocked before the end. It was so bad that devs decided to redo the war for a second chance. This war was even worse. Nobody managed to get mechs at all. Mechanically, this would have been the best Dead Harvest with the most features. In practice though, it faded away faster in supply caches. Voxel was completely changing its identity during this time, and Dead Harvest was caught in the middle of it. In October 2021, we got the official announcement that Dead Harvest wouldn't happen that year. It was disappointing, but it was understandably too much work for devs, with very little benefit, seeing how the last 2 ones failed. We have not received any more information about Dead Harvest after that, and it's safe to assume we won't get any. I created this video hoping it would help inform new players about a cool thing that used to happen. I hope this helps. Thanks for watching.